As we draw to a close, at all of these events that I've been at, I've realized that there are fans and followers and readers of you guys in the audience, and they are here for you, actually. They came specifically to hear you. And so I'd like to end by asking each of you to pretend you're speaking to just one of them individually and give them your best wishes for their human flourishing.
If you have young children, restrict their screen use as much as you can until as late as they can be. That's a piece of advice number one. Piece of advice number two, your happiness derives from your relationship with the people that you look in the eye, not your Twitter friends or your Facebook friends. As a subcategory of piece of advice number two, stop using social media. Okay? Go back, if you can, and I know not everybody can, go back to thinking locally. So when you buy food, when you think about where your water comes from, when you think about where your electricity comes from, when you think about where your friends are, think about the real people who are around you and not the weird thing that happens on the internet. And my last piece of advice is forgive the people around you for not being perfect. Because those 14 or 15 people that you really know well will do things that really annoy you a lot all the time because they're like you. They're not perfect, but they're all that you've got. And when you show them forgiveness and affection, you deepen the bonds that you have with them, and they'll show that back to you. And at the end of the day, all that you've got are these personal connections with the people around you. So that's my advice to the to any fans that I might have here.
I think we can end here. This was beautifully eloquent, and I don't have anything to add. My piece of advice is follow his advice. I'm not really in the business of giving advice. I'm a flawed human being, so I wouldn't really want to give advice to people. Perhaps what I would say is that I've thoroughly enjoyed this event, and one thing that I think I really appreciate about you guys here, about the people who organized it, is the willingness to bring together people with different points of view, to have civil and polite and friendly and fun discourse without being at each other's throats. In today's world, I think that is critical. And I commend you all for coming to something like this, for listening to views that for some of you may not resonate very well, for being patient, for being kind, for listening to other points of view, for engaging with us. That to me is very, very important. So I don't know if it's a piece of advice, but I want to express my gratitude for this event and for this kind of dialogue. It's something I thoroughly enjoy. I really enjoy being in events like this. I really enjoy interacting with other human beings. I really enjoy hearing other perspectives, especially so, to give you an example, I was talking to Michael earlier in the so-called green room, that I would love to get together with him and see exactly where it is that he and I diverge intellectually. It's fascinating to me. So if we could all do more of this, I think we probably would live in a much better world.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that was all pretty good advice, especially from somebody who said he doesn't give advice. But I'm a philosopher, so I do get... No. In all seriousness, I think really I'll just reiterate something that I said before, that you know, as a Christian, I think that human well-being consists in two things. First of all, being good stewards of the creation that's been given to us. And I think we all recognize that that's not just a duty, but it's something in the doing of which we find genuine flourishing and happiness. And the second, and more important, is loving the Lord our God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and loving our neighbor as ourselves. I think that, again, most of us recognize that in those profound moments of relationships of love and friendship that we have with one another, and for those who are believers in relationship with God, that's where we find our truest flourishing. But it's also true, as a Christian, at least as Christians believe, that we live in a world that's broken. that we live in a world that's afflicted by sin, and that it detracts from our flourishing. It keeps us from doing those things in a way that allows us to be all of those things that God created us to be. And the remedy for that is to be related to God through the death and resurrection of Jesus. And so I think that's an important ingredient for human flourishing as well. So in addition to carrying out those mandates of stewarding the creation and loving God and one another, I think what's important is for us to find our home and our rest in our relationship with Christ.
Thank you. So we've come to the end of our time together. Please join me once again to thank our three speakers. It was fascinating.